Have you ever shared your origin story, your comic book number one, your come up, if you will? I actually will share mine with you in just a little bit, but I would love to hear your origin stories. So share them out there, tag me in them, at PT Educator on all the socials. I want to hear your comic book story number one. Over the last couple months, I've had a bunch of new followers, and I figured I'd take this time to kind of introduce myself again and tell my comic book story number one, my origin story. It's a wild one. It's pretty roller coastery, if you will. But I actually had several opportunities to share my story over the last couple of years on different podcasts and different interviews and things like that. But I never really took time to just kind of piece it all together and put it in my own words for my own storytelling purpose, for my own podcast. So I'm just kind of sharing this out because I felt like it needed to be done, just to kind of reflect a little bit on what all has happened and transpired over the years. But um, I grew up on Long Island, Islip, New York, tiny little hamlet out there, right in about the middle of Long Island, New York. And I had a great childhood. I really did. My dad was an English teacher for many, many years. And in the summer times, he owned a landscaping business, which his partner ran full time throughout the year. He would have me and my brother help him with landscaping jobs from time to time. My mom worked for many banks, started, I believe it was Manufacturers Hanover, might have even been one before then, survived many of the mergers and ended up as a VP at JP Morgan Chase, as it's come to be known. And realistically, my parents did a unbelievable job raising my brother and I. We were reading and writing at an early age. We got to watch them as they were the president of many clubs and groups, the Booster Club, Friends of the Arts, all while taking me and my brother to all the practices for sports, all the rehearsals for plays, student government events, class events, you name it, church, volunteerism. We did it all. We stayed busy. And that was thanks to my mom and dad. They really did a great job raising my brother and I. The one thing that I realized very early on in my life was I kind of wanted to get out of New York. It was April, I believe it was Good Friday, right around Easter time, and it snowed, which was right around my birthday, right? April 13th was my birthday. And it snowed in New York during Easter, and I was just over that. I was sick of shoveling it. I was sick of having to go out early and start the car and get the defroster going. I just never really enjoyed shoveling snow. So I ended up looking into schools once I was getting ready to graduate, all down south. I think the furthest north that I applied was University of Virginia, and the furthest south I applied was Tulane. And the only place I got into after applying to places like Clemson, UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, Virginia, Wake Forest, uh, Tulane, and maybe there was one more. But after applying to all these places, the only place I got into was Wake Forest and Tulane, but Tulane was a little bit too far south for me. Um, and so I ended up going to Wake Forest. I had a familiarity with North Carolina. We used to have a summer house there, up on the 10th tee of a golf course. And my brother and I used to go out and find golf balls on the golf course and then sell them back to the golfers the next day there on the 10th tee. It was pretty awesome. That was my introduction to entrepreneurship. And again, I think I have my dad to thank for that. I didn't really realize it at the time, but he was definitely teaching us the entrepreneurial mindset. And so that's always kind of lived within me, I think, at a very early age. But my brother and I never had any needs or wants during the summertime because we basically made a bunch of money selling golf balls and then would spend all our summer money there in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So familiar with North Carolina, ended up getting into Wake Forest, private school. In hindsight, probably should have stayed in New York, went to a community college for 2 years, then a state school for 2 years, then probably should have gone to a state school for grad school as well. But it was just, again, the winters were cold. I wanted out. So I ended up going to Wake Forest. I was an English major. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I was getting close to graduation. My senior year, second semester, I think I was taking golf, bowling, and intro to Japan. So on top of my very busy schedule, I had plenty of time to party. But I also didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I wanted to help people, but I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be in English, right? It wasn't going to be reading or writing or teaching or editing. None of that really appealed to me. So, my senior year, in between all that free time, I volunteered at the hospital and they put me in the PT department. So, I was working with physical therapists to get home exercise programs put together, to file charts away for them. Anything they needed done around the gym, I just kind of did as a volunteer. And it ended up being something that I really saw myself doing. I was like, wow, they're batting the balloons around. I'm playing with patients. Like, this looks great. I could do this. And then I realized I don't have any of the prereqs. I started looking at the list and I was like, nope, 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 don't have that one, don't have that one. So I graduated in 4 years with my BA in English, then took another year, year and a half just to take all the prereqs I needed to then apply to graduate school. And I applied to a couple, mostly in North Carolina there, Winston-Salem State, Duke, Chapel Hill, and East Carolina, and ended up getting into East Carolina on my second attempt, I believe it was. So went to PT school there. It was a master's program. I ended up finishing the master's program, and then they offered us a third-year transitional doctorate if we stuck around and did the extra year. So I said, well, it seems like that's the direction that the profession's going in, so I might as well do that. And I started the DPT program there. But while that was going on, my dad kind of got sick. He was having some heart problems. He was going through a health journey of his own, and at some point he ended up having a heart procedure to remove a blockage from his heart, and it ended up being just too much for his system. Through an embolism, and he ended up passing away on the operating table. Um, and so for many years, I, I really didn't realize the impact that that had on me. And I was working as a tech at the time because I failed my board exam a handful of times. But the first time I failed it, I missed by one question. And so I said, all right, well, I didn't study that hard. I knew I was sticking around for a third year doctoral program, so I could just study more and take it again, right? Well, the second time I took it, I studied more, harder, didn't work. I ended up getting worse on the exam, missed it by like 5 or 6 questions. At this point, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, South Carolina was a three strike state at the time where if you didn't pass it in three times, you couldn't practice there. My family was living in Charleston. I wanted to practice and live there, so that was my big plan. Took it the third time, same results, didn't pass. So now I don't know what to do, right? My life is ruined, it's over. So I moved back in with my parents, and I'm living in their basement, and I'm studying for the board exam, and I'm working as a caddy out at one of the local golf courses, and then I'm also working as a physical therapy technician at the hospital. And I ended up having to walk past the room where my dad passed away uh, to clock in and clock out every day. And that really started to wear on me. And like I said, it took me a couple years to process this, and I didn't realize how much it impacted me. And I almost didn't become a physical therapist. But after a whole lot of asking God why and why me, and all the oh woe is me stuff, I kind of just put on my big boy pants and ended up taking the test again and finally ended up passing it. And when I did that, I started realizing that I just kind of wanted to travel, see the country a little bit. So I went right into travel therapy for my first year out of school. Ended up in the middle of nowhere, Texas. That was interesting. I kind of did that as a favor to the recruiter, though, so that I could get my next contract, which was 5 or 6 months out in Honolulu, Hawaii. That was phenomenal. Loved it. Really enjoyed the island life and really becoming part of the culture. It was great. You start out as a haole, right? The typical white guy, they all point, oh, this haole. But as soon as you get grandma better, you're part of the family. They're offering your plate lunch and all sorts of gifts and things, which Ironically enough, you have to accept. Most times you're not allowed to accept tips and gifts and things like that. But in the Hawaiian culture, it was like a slap in the face if you didn't. So that was a whole lot of fun to get to be part of the culture and live it out and really get to enjoy the perks of Hawaii for many months. Then I ended up back in Asheville, North Carolina, doing home health for a while. Before I ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I kind of settled down, did outpatient for many years. Um, Moved down to Savannah, Georgia. From there, we went to Atlanta, where I did some home health from Atlanta, or not home health, I'm sorry, workman's comp. Then from Savannah, we moved to Atlanta. Atlanta, we moved to Waco, Texas, to be closer to my wife's family after we had our son. And yeah, after that, it just kind of became, trying to find myself and settle into my own. And I realized working for the workman's comp place that I had some decent ideas and things that I thought could kind of help. And upper management just didn't really seem receptive to those ideas. And I was working on my EDD at the time. So around 2018, I finished my EDD after finishing my transitional doctorate as well. So I had my TDPT, my EDD, and as soon as I finished the dissertation, I went right back into clinical again because I was just so burnt out on the dissertation process and academia in general. So once I did that, I started finding that I really enjoyed the geriatric population more and more, and I was working in SNFs and home health. And just kind of seeing patients on my own. I started my own side business as a mobile PT, and that was fun. That was the first ever business I started in my professional career. Still kind of do it to this day a little bit, but nowadays there's some other endeavors that I do that are just a little bit more my style and more my speed. So yeah, I was working probably 90 hours a week at some points, doing home health, SNF, and my own clients. And it was great. I mean, the money was good, but we knew it wasn't sustainable. And fortunately and unfortunately, COVID hit, right? So 2020 was a pretty major shakeup. And, with my wife being a type 1 diabetic and a stay-at-home mom, I didn't really want to risk bringing that home to her. So I made a shift. I made a transition into academia, out of clinical, and realized that I really did enjoy teaching. I loved teaching, and I was doing a little bit of contributing faculty work before then, but it just wasn't, it didn't feel like a perfect fit. When I got this first full-time teaching job, it really felt like a good fit. Um, but I always said to my bosses that if I was ever going to be a program director, it wasn't going to be in a DPT program. It would probably be in an EDD program, just because I love teaching and educating and learning more, right? I was a terrible learner in college and grad school. Right? I was a rote memorizer that's not learning, right? I just had this idea of like, oh, if I just read this over and over and over and highlight it over and over and over till I get it, I'll just know it. And then I'll dump the information and learn it all over again for the next test, right? So that didn't work, obviously, right? It wasn't a great learning experience. And so I really started to dive into more of the theory and the application of teaching and learning through my EDD program. And that really showed me the different ways to learn. And I realized I started putting pieces together of how I learned best, or how I thought I learned best, at least. The weird thing is, just a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and that makes sense now in hindsight why I struggled so much, right? I struggled with my board exam. My dissertation took 2 extra semesters for a lot of reasons. But yeah, it makes sense now in hindsight, the ADHD thing. Um, didn't stop me from, achieving many, many great things and having a great career. It just was an interesting barrier and a different way I had to look at things, and different techniques and strategies I had to find for my own personal learning. So that leads me to what I'm doing today, and I do a lot of teaching and educating for professors to kind of help them along the EDD side of stuff and learning how to teach better, and students how to learn better, and still running my business on the side, which I love, which centers a lot around podcasting and business coaching and consulting. And those things are not only more interesting and fulfilling to me, but also a lot more lucrative too. So that's why, like I said, the mobile practice at this point is really only friend and family referral. And it's just so I can kind of keep my hands active and see some patients, and keep one foot in the boat of patient care, because that's really what started, my journey, and really how a big piece of my identity has come to be. And that's every time somebody says, hey, I'm so and so, what do you do? My knee-jerk reaction is always just, oh, I'm a physical therapist, right? And then, oh yeah, I also, do some teaching, and I own a business as well. So, I come around to all those things, but again, the initial knee-jerk reaction is always just, oh, I'm a physical therapist, because that really was such a big part of my life, and is still to this day. It's offered me amazing opportunities. It's a profession that I truly love, and I love helping people. But given all of that and navigating all of that has been an amazing opportunity for me. However, it's all been in the journey, or the goal of trying to seek mastery, right? And really learn my craft as best I can. Um, and it's an interesting one, because for me, it's really where business, education, and physical therapy or healthcare intersect. And that's a tough place to be sometimes, because you're always kind of looked a little bit like the black sheep in all of the different areas, right? Like, academia doesn't always look at business fondly. Business doesn't always look at academia fondly. Healthcare doesn't look at either one of them fondly per se, unless they're trying to help you out. But, again, we're pretty slow to go from academia to research and clinical, and vice versa. It's hard to do the clinical stuff and relay the research when it feels like it's taken forever to get there. So it's an interesting dichotomy, but it's the three areas that I love most and that have really come together to help me build who I am and what I do and how I help people. And I think the biggest impact I've had over the last couple of years has just really been helping people find their zone of genius and then center a business around that so that they can generate more money, and more revenue, more income, so they can either pay down their student loans quicker or more efficiently, or pay down debts, or start the investing phase of their life. Um, and so that's where I'm at. That brings us up to the present day. That's my origin story, how it all started. That's the path and the journey I took to get here, which was a very winding one. It was not a very straight and narrow. But I hope that that was interesting to you. I hope it inspires you to share your origin story, your comic book number one, because again, people need to know who you are and what you do and what makes you you, right? How you kind of came up to be. And so I would love to hear yours. Like I said, share them out there, tag me in them. I would love to hear them. I'm just hoping that this inspires you to go out and do something great and be that superhero and share those superpowers that you have with the rest of the world.